Greetings, and welcome back to my channel. Get ready, because today we're unearthing a tale that will test your nerves. If you crave adrenaline and the shadows that hide the unknown, then hit that like button and subscribe to join us for more terrifying stories. Okay, so picture this. Halloween night, crisp autumn air, leaves crunching underfoot, the whole 9 yards. But this wasn't just any Halloween in our little corner of Pennsylvania. This was haunted basement Halloween. Yeah, you heard that right. My parents, bless their slightly theatrical hearts, turned our basement into a haunted house every single year. And not just for kicks and giggles, mind you. This was a charity gig. Canned food donations were the price of admission, and every single can went straight to the local food bank. Pretty cool, right? Even for a kid who was, let's be honest, sometimes mortified by his parents' enthusiasm. Now, our house? It was perfect for this kind of thing. Old brick colonial. The kind that whispered stories of generations past in every creaking floorboard and drafty window. Especially at night, when the shadows stretched long and the wind rattled the old window panes. It had this vibe. Eerie, maybe. Definitely atmospheric. My cousins, bless their teenage hearts, were all in on it too. Jeff, Rick, Chaz, and Eric the older, cooler cousins who always seem to know how to make things, well, cooler. They descend on our house every October, armed with boundless energy and a shared mission. To scare the living daylights out of every kid who dared to venture into our haunted basement. This particular year, they'd really outdone themselves. They decided to ditch the usual cheesy monster masks and go for something different, something unsettling. Anonymous masks. Those stark white, emotionless faces that just stared. You know the ones. They were creepy on their own, but in the dimly lit, spiderweb-draped basement, lurking in the shadows, downright terrifying. And for a bunch of preteen kids hyped up on candy corn and cheap thrills, forget about it. Nightmare fuel. The haunted house was a hit, as always. Lines snaked down our front walk, kids in costumes giggling nervously, parents clutching cans of green beans and corn, ready for a good scare and a good cause. The basement was a cacophony of shrieks, laughter, and the low thrum of the strobe lights my dad had rigged up. My cousins, masked and silent, were in their element, leaping out from behind strategically placed cardboard tombstones and rattling chains with gusto. But then, things started to get weird. It was early evening, the haunted house was just getting into full swing, when my mom pulled me aside, a strange look on her face. "Honey," she said, her voice hushed, "there was a man here earlier. Kind of odd." "Odd how?" I asked, because, Halloween, odd was kind of the point. "Well," she hesitated, glancing around as if someone might be eavesdropping. "He was alone. No kids. Said his wife and daughter were coming later, but he wanted to drop off the food early." Alone? That was unusual. Most of the adults were wrangling kids, herding them through the haunted house, trying to manage the chaos. A lone man, showing up before the crowds, just to drop off cans? It felt off-key. "Did you recognize him?" I asked, suddenly feeling a prickle of unease myself. She shook her head slowly. "Never seen him before in my life. Your father neither. Just strange vibes, My mom was usually pretty unflappable, a rock of calm in our sometimes chaotic family. If she was picking up on strange vibes, that was definitely something to pay attention to. What did he look like? I pressed, my kid detective instincts kicking in. "Oh, she shrugged, trying to downplay it. "Average. Kind of nondescript. Didn't really stand out. Except," she paused again, her brow furrowed. "He kept looking around, like he was scoping things out. And he asked a lot of questions. About the basement. About the house." My unease ratcheted up a notch. Questions about the basement? That was specific. What kind of questions? Just general stuff, I guess. How old the house was, how big the basement is, if we used it for anything else besides Halloween. Just nosy, She forced a smile, trying to reassure me, and maybe herself. Probably just curious. "Don't worry about it, sweetie. Just Keep an eye out, okay? Keep an eye out for a nondescript, nosy, vaguely creepy man who'd shown up alone at our haunted basement charity event? Right, like I could just forget about that. The image of the anonymous masks my cousins were wearing suddenly felt a lot less like Halloween fun and a lot more like a hiding place. The evening wore on, the crowd swelled, the basement echoed with screams and laughter. I tried to push my mom's words to the back of my mind, to focus on the fun, the candy, the thrill of being scared silly with my friends. But that little seed of unease had been planted, and it was starting to sprout roots. Later, as I was weaving through the throngs of costumed kids, trying to keep track of my friend Sarah, bless her jumpy little heart, came running up to me, tears streaming down her face, her voice choked with sobs. "He scared me," she wailed, grabbing my arm, her small hand trembling in mine. "He really, really scared me." "Who? One of my cousins?" I asked, trying to soothe her, figuring she'd just gotten a particularly enthusiastic jump scare. "It's just Jeff or Rick. It's okay. It's all fake." She shook her head vehemently, tears flying. "No, not your cousin. A man, in a white mask. He grabbed me." Grabbed her? That was definitely not part of the haunted house plan. My cousins were supposed to scare, not touch. "Grabbed you how?" I asked, my stomach clenching, my earlier unease solidifying into a cold knot of dread. "My wrist," she sobbed, pointing to her tiny wrist, already red and blotchy. "He grabbed my wrist really hard, and he tried to pull me into the closet." Into the closet? There wasn't a closet in the basement, not a real one, just the storage room, crammed with boxes and dusty junk, hidden behind a heavy, creaky door. But still, the way she was crying, the genuine terror in her eyes. This wasn't just a kid being dramatic. Something had happened. Something real. Something wrong. "Show me," I said, my voice barely a whisper, my heart pounding in my chest. She led me back through the maze of decorations, back to a dimly lit corner near the storage room door. "There," she pointed, her finger trembling. "He was standing there, behind that spooky tree, and when I walked by, he jumped out and grabbed me, and he tried to pull me in there." She gestured towards the storage room door, her eyes wide with remembered fear. I stared at the storage room door, the heavy wooden panel looming in the dim light, suddenly feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. A closet, a dark, hidden space, a man in a mask, pulling a little girl towards it. It was like something out of a nightmare. I knew I had to tell my parents. This wasn't just a kid getting scared. This was something else, something disturbing. I found them near the canned food donation table, still beaming with Halloween cheer, still oblivious to the creeping unease that was starting to permeate the haunted basement. I pulled them aside, my voice trembling slightly as I recounted Sarah's story, the grabbed wrist, the closet, the man in the mask. Their smiles faded, their faces growing serious, the festive Halloween atmosphere abruptly evaporating. They listened intently, their eyes widening with concern, their earlier vague unease solidifying into something much more concrete. "Did you see who it was?" my dad asked, his voice low and urgent. "Did you recognize him?" I shook my head. She said he was wearing one of the anonymous masks, like my cousins. My parents exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them, a shared understanding of the potential gravity of the situation. "We need to find your cousins," my mom said, her voice firm, all traces of Halloween cheer gone. "Now." We fanned out through the basement, searching for Jeff, Rick, Chaz, and Eric. Our voices hushed, our movements urgent. We found Jeff lurking behind a cardboard coffin, Rick crouched behind a fake tombstone, and Chaz hidden amongst a tangle of fake spiderwebs. All three of them, still masked, still in character, still ready to scare. My dad gathered them together, his voice serious, his usual jovial Halloween demeanor replaced by a stern authority. He told them what Sarah had said, about the grabbed wrist, the closet, the man in the mask. He asked them, point blank, if any of them had done it. Jeff, Rick, and Chaz, still masked and anonymous, vehemently denied it. They swore they hadn't touched any kids, hadn't tried to pull anyone anywhere, hadn't seen anything suspicious. Each one of them, in turn, insisted they'd been in their assigned scare zones, focused on their jobs, completely unaware of any incidents. But then, my mom noticed something missing. "Where's Eric?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. "Has anyone seen Eric?" A wave of unease rippled through the small group. Eric, the fourth cousin. Where was he? He wasn't at his post, wasn't lurking in his assigned shadow, wasn't anywhere to be seen. We called his name, our voices echoing through the cavernous basement. "Eric? Eric." Silence. Only the low hum of the strobe lights and the distant shrieks of unsuspecting haunted house visitors answered us. Just then, as if summoned by our growing panic, Eric came running down the basement stairs, breathless and flustered, his face flushed, his eyes wide. "Guys," he gasped, out of breath, "you won't believe what happened." "Where were you?" my dad demanded, his voice sharp with concern. "We've been looking all over for you." "Upstairs," Eric panted, still catching his breath. "I went upstairs to use the bathroom. Quick trip, you know? And when I came back down," he trailed off, his eyes widening, his voice dropping to a hushed whisper, "my mask was gone." Gone? His anonymous mask? Vanished into thin air. In the middle of our crowded, chaotic, haunted basement? He figured one of the other guys had taken it. A prank. A Halloween joke? He'd assumed they were messing with him, hiding his mask for a laugh. But now, hearing Sarah's story, seeing the fear in her eyes, the pieces started to click into place, forming a chilling, unsettling picture. A missing mask, a scared child, a strange man earlier in the evening, asking questions about the basement. It was all starting to add up to something deeply disturbing, something that went far beyond Halloween pranks and spooky fun. My parents didn't hesitate. They made a snap decision, a decision that changed the whole trajectory of our Halloween night. They immediately shut down the haunted house. Just like that, Halloween fun abruptly over. "That's it," my dad announced, his voice firm and decisive. "Haunted house is closed. Everyone out." He started ushering the remaining families towards the stairs, his apologies vague, his explanations rushed, his priority clear. "Get everyone out of the basement, now." My mom called the police. Again, for the second time in one night. The police arrived, sirens wailing, lights flashing, a familiar, unwelcome disruption to our Halloween festivities. They searched the house again, this time with a more focused intensity, a more palpable sense of urgency. They looked for the missing mask, for any sign of the strange man, for any evidence of anything untoward. But of course, nothing turned up. No mask, no man, no evidence. Just emptiness, and a lingering sense of unease that clung to the air like the smell of damp earth and fake spiderwebs. That night, after the police had left, after the last of the Halloween decorations had been hastily dismantled and shoved back into dusty boxes, after the house had settled back into an uneasy silence, I was still shaken up, but I figured it was all over. A false alarm, a misunderstanding, a childish overreaction. The mask would turn up. Eric had probably just misplaced it. Sarah was probably just spooked by a particularly enthusiastic cousin. The strange man was probably just strange. Halloween night jitters, nothing more. I fell asleep easily enough, exhaustion finally overcoming my lingering unease, the sugar rush of Halloween candy finally wearing off. But then I woke up, again, to a sound, a tapping sound, soft, almost delicate, but definitely noticeable, like someone was repeatedly knocking on my bedroom window. Tap, 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 a slow, deliberate rhythm in the darkness, a persistent, unsettling percussion against the silence of the night. Fear, cold and clammy, gripped me, paralyzing me in place. I was too scared to move, too terrified to even breathe. I just lay there, rigid with fear, pulling the covers up over my chin, burrowing deeper into the perceived safety of my blankets, hoping, praying, that it was all just a bad dream, that I could just fall back asleep and wake up to a normal, non-haunted, non-creepy Tuesday morning. After a few minutes, Agonizingly long minutes that stretched into an eternity of fear. The knocking stopped. Silence descended again, heavy and oppressive, broken only by the frantic pounding of my own heart. And, eventually, mercifully, I managed to drift back to sleep, a fitful, uneasy slumber haunted by shadows and whispers, by the image of blank white masks lurking in the darkness. But a few hours later, just as dawn was beginning to paint the eastern sky with streaks of pale gray, I was woken up again, this time by a different sound, a scratching noise, louder, more urgent than the knocking had been, like someone was clawing at the window frame, scraping against the glass, desperate to get in, or maybe desperate to get my attention. Terror, raw and visceral, surged through me, overwhelming, debilitating. I was paralyzed with fear, frozen in place, unable to move, unable to breathe, convinced that whatever was outside my window was not just a figment of my imagination, not just a Halloween prank gone wrong, but something real, something dangerous, something malevolent. But then, something inside me snapped. A primal instinct, a surge of adrenaline, a desperate need to confront whatever was out there, to face my fear, to break free from the paralysis that had gripped me. I couldn't lie there cowering under the covers any longer. I had to know. I had to see. I threw the covers off, adrenaline coursing through my veins, fear momentarily overridden by a surge of reckless courage, a desperate need for answers. I rushed to the window, my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird, my breath held captive in my lungs. I yanked open the curtains, my hand trembling, my eyes squeezed shut for a split second, bracing myself for whatever was waiting on the other side. And then I opened my eyes, and my heart nearly stopped. There, staring back at me, inches from the glass, eyes wide and unblinking, face pressed against the cold window pane, was a person. In an anonymous mask, the same blank, white mask that had haunted my Halloween night. The mask that had become a symbol of fear and unease, now inches from my face, a silent, terrifying specter in the pale dawn light. I screamed, a raw, primal scream of pure, unreasoning terror, ripped from my throat, echoing through the stillness of the morning, shattering the fragile peace of the pre-dawn hours. My parents, jolted awake by my terrified shriek, rushed into the room, their faces etched with alarm, their eyes wide with concern. "What is it? What happened?" my dad demanded, his voice thick with sleep and worry. I pointed frantically at the window, my hand trembling uncontrollably, my voice choked with terror, barely able to speak. There, at the window, the mask. But by the time they looked, by the time their eyes focused on the window pane, by the time they registered the frantic terror in my voice and the wildness in my eyes, the person was gone, vanished, melted back into the shadows of the yard, leaving only the lingering echo of my scream, the faint scratching marks on the window frame, and the cold, hard reality of what I had just seen, what I knew, with chilling certainty, was real. We called the police. Once again, the third time in less than 12 hours. They came, sirens and lights, the familiar, unwelcome routine of fear and officialdom, the weary sighs of officers who were probably starting to think we were just a family of attention-seeking drama queens. They searched the yard, the surrounding area, the whole neighborhood. It felt like, their flashlights cutting through the dim morning light, their voices low and professional, their expressions a mixture of concern and skepticism. But they didn't find anyone. No sign of forced entry, no footprints in the dew-kissed grass, no discarded mask, nothing. The property was clear, they declared, their voices tinged with a weariness that mirrored my own exhaustion, their reassurances hollow and unconvincing. A few months passed. The leaves turned brown, then fell, leaving the trees bare and skeletal against the winter sky. Halloween became a distant memory, a faded photograph in the album of our family history, a story we rarely spoke of, a night we all tried to forget. My parents, gradually, started to ease up on their extra security measures, the heightened vigilance slowly fading back into the background of our daily lives, life slowly returning to a semblance of normalcy. Then, one day, in the dead of winter, Months after Halloween. Months after the masked figure at my window. Months after the fear had begun to recede. I came home from school. Just a normal Tuesday afternoon. A mundane, uneventful day, homework and after-school snacks on my mind. The memory of Halloween fading into the background noise of my teenage life. I walked into my bedroom, tossed my backpack on the floor with a teenage sigh, and stopped dead in my tracks. Lying on my bed, right in the center of my neatly made comforter, stark white against the pale blue fabric, was an anonymous mask. White, blank, unsettling. It wasn't just any mask. It looked exactly like the ones my cousins had worn that night. The masks that had become synonymous with fear and Halloween terror. The masks that haunted my nightmares. But the thing that really freaked me out, the thing that sent a fresh wave of icy dread washing over me, a chilling premonition of something terrible to come, was the writing. Scrawled across the forehead of the mask, in jagged black Sharpie, uneven and menacing, was my name. My name, staring back at me from the blank, white expanse of the mask, a silent, personalized threat, a chilling message from an unseen tormentor. How the hell had that guy even known my name? How had he gotten into my room? How had he left that mask, that terrifying, personalized message on my bed, in the middle of a normal Tuesday afternoon, months after Halloween, months after we thought it was all over? The question swirled in my mind, a vortex of fear and confusion, a terrifying realization that whatever had happened on Halloween night, whatever had lurked outside my window, whatever had left that mask on my bed, was not over. Not by a long shot. We called the police. Again. For the fourth time in a few months. But there wasn't much they could do. Not really. No evidence of forced entry, no witnesses, no fingerprints on the mask, no anything. Just a mask, a creepy mask with my name scrawled on it, a tangible manifestation of an unseen threat. They filed a report, another file in the growing folder of unexplained incidents at our address. Another entry in the ever-expanding mystery of the anonymous mask. My parents, understandably, went into security overdrive. Again, for what felt like the 100th time. They added more security cameras, strategically placed around the perimeter of the house, recording every shadow, every movement, every rustle of leaves in the wind. They made absolutely sure all the doors and windows were locked tight, double-locked, triple-locked, every single night, checking and rechecking. Their faces etched with worry, their sleep haunted by shadows. They really went over the top this time, installing a full-blown alarm system, with motion sensors and window sensors and door sensors, turning our house into a veritable fortress, a paranoid sanctuary against an unseen enemy. After that, miraculously, terrifyingly, nothing else happened. At least, not that we could prove. The next few months were fine, outwardly normal. Life resumed its predictable rhythm: school, homework, chores, family dinners, weekend outings. But underneath the veneer of normalcy, a current of unease still flowed, a lingering fear that refused to dissipate. And I swore, sometimes late at night, when the house was quiet and still, when everyone else was asleep, I kept hearing things outside my bedroom window. Tapping, scratching, whispering sounds in the darkness. You name it. It was probably nothing, just the wind, just the trees, just my overactive imagination, fueled by fear and paranoia, playing tricks on my sleep-deprived teenage brain. But it got to the point where I was scared to sleep in my own bed. The sanctuary of my room, once a safe haven, a place of comfort and refuge, had been violated, tainted by fear, haunted by the image of that mask at my window, by the chilling message scrawled across its forehead, by the persistent, unsettling feeling that I was not alone, even in my own bedroom, even in the supposed safety of my own home. I've since grown up, moved out of that house, started my own life, miles away from Taunton, Pennsylvania, and the brick house that held so many unsettling memories, so many unanswered questions, so many lingering fears. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and still, when the shadows stretch long and the wind whispers through the trees, I still wonder. I still wonder if there was more to the story, more to the mystery behind what happened to me, to us, all those years ago. If there was something darker, something more sinister lurking beneath the surface of our seemingly normal suburban life, hidden behind a blank white mask, waiting in the shadows, watching from the darkness, always just outside my window.